genuinely believe that American growth and the knock-on effects for the rest of the world would be higher and stronger were it not for this cancerous growth in Washington that encompasses both main parties. And neither they're so busy shouting at each other with these idiotic culture wars that they just can't see that they each have a deep problem that they need to resolve for the benefit of this, what I feel is a great republic, a tremendous success story.
Let's cross for a moment to the other big election of the moment, the marginally less important battle over who gets to become the next president of the United States. Donald Trump has been he's been campaigning, as he has been doing so often, but he's been campaigning in a campaign branded garbage truck to hit back at President Biden's criticism of his supporters allegedly as garbage. Listen.
I think the Democrats have done a very poor job. We're leading in every state. We're leading big, and I think that the comment made by really both of them, because there are really two of them, about being garbage, maybe 250 million people, they shouldn't be talking. That's like deplorable for Hillary. This is the deplorable for Hillary, and I think this is worse, actually. For Joe Biden to make that statement, it's really a disgrace.
Manveen, I don't want to get bogged down into whether or not Joe Biden said an apostrophe or didn't say an apostrophe, because at this stage it frankly doesn't matter. Trump is very good at just sort of leaping on this stuff and sort of cashing in on it in political terms, turning up in a garbage truck the next day. Is he simply better at politics than Kamala Harris is, do you think?
I think he is an inveterate politician. I think he's very good at grabbing hold of anything and turning it into, often by deliberately misunderstanding, turning it into something that will work to his advantage. And I think very few politicians are good at that, mainly because quite often there is an implicit lie in there. There is the deliberate misunderstanding in order to turn it into something very popular. I do think Joe Biden has done everything he can to make this an impossible campaign for Kamala Harris, not least sort of hanging on to the presidency for as long as he did. And then comments like that are utterly unhelpful. As Trump said, we saw the impact that Hillary Clinton's comments about the deplorables had. You are just making an already polarized country even more polarized. You're basically making out that an awful lot of America, effectively, the American version of the Left Behinds, aren't worth your time as a politician. And I sort of think that's pretty appalling in a democracy. I sort of feel like somebody should just quietly gag him for the rest of his time in office and hope he stops having an impact on this particular election.
I can well imagine that after the last week that's actually in fact happened. Matthew, you've been writing about America's problems, saying that its superb engineers, entrepreneurs and army of industrious workers are being held back by a corrupt and parasitical political class. Tell us what you mean.
It's difficult to go beyond that description, what it says on the tin. I swear. The economy is extraordinary in the United States. I'm just looking at a graph here of the real growth of GDP from 2019 fourth quarter to 2023. United States 5.4%, UK minus 0.5%. You get the sense, I was in Washington, you could just get a sense of the extraordinary dynamism in this country, these huge capital markets, vast consumer market, the entrepreneurial spirit. I still think it's a frontier nation with a frontier mentality to a large extent, except they're not pushing back the geographical frontier, they're pushing back the intellectual, scientific and technological frontier. They still dominate the winners of the Nobel Prizes. They're writing incredibly brilliant papers in AI and neuroscience, and just to sense the frisson associated with that is honestly highly intoxicating. You look at the podcasts being put out there by American thinkers, and it's quite brilliant. And that sits behind, I think, this entrepreneurism, scientific and otherwise, behind the economic growth. But the political class, Washington, D.C., I think, is a disgrace. Republicans and Democrats alike, I think, are highly corrupt. I was amazed to see one bit of research that 2/3 of these Congress men and women go on to become lobbyists. The donations to political parties, the revolving door between regulators and the companies that they regulate. I genuinely believe that American growth and the knock-on effects for the rest of the world would be higher and stronger were it not for this cancerous growth in Washington that encompasses both main parties. And they're so busy shouting at each other with these idiotic culture wars that they just can't see that they each have a deep problem that they need to resolve for the benefit of this, what I feel is a great republic, a tremendous success story. And I fear, I mean, to be frank, Hugo, I fear very much a Trump presidency. I think he is a very dangerous person, but I do think that the Democrats are corrupt too.
Isn't there an argument, Matthew, that, I mean, Trump, for all his faults, and don't get me wrong, I would be very happy to go big on his faults. He'd agree with you on this, wouldn't he? I mean, he loathes Washington. He thinks Washington gets in the way. You know, he's a very drain the swampy sort of politician. Or would you say that, in fact, even though he says all this stuff, he's sort of creating the same structure himself? He is as much part of the problem while he condemns the problem.
Well, I think first of all, the draining of the swamp I love, because Washington was a swamp,
literally a swamp. Yes,
and it's amazing that they drained it and solved problems with malaria. I mean, they were really such a pioneering country even back in the late 18th century. But he talks about draining the swamp, and I think he sees a systemic problem, as many people do. But he did nothing to try and solve it. He makes more immediate threats to the institutional norms, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
A peaceful transfer of power is very difficult to do historically, because it means the person with the power controlling the military has to voluntarily relinquish it because of some bizarre ritual of people writing X's on bits of paper. It took thousands of years for humans to be able to do this and do it well. I don't think he wants to do that. He tried to reduce the institutional independence of many of the key branches of the government when he was president. But you're right. He does see a deeper systemic problem, but he does nothing about it. And as I say, he's a much bigger immediate threat to the fabric of the Constitution.
People are not garbage. I can tell you who the real garbage is, but we won't say that.
All right, guys.
I think the Democrats have done a very poor job. We're leading in every state. We're leading big, and I think that the comment made by really both of them, because there are really two of them, about being garbage, maybe 250 million people, they shouldn't be talking. That's like deplorable for Hillary. This is the deplorable for Hillary. And I think this is worse, actually. For Joe Biden to make that statement, it's really a disgrace. And I think 250 million people in this country are going to be very happy, because we're going to bring the country back. We're a nation in decline, very, very serious decline, and we're going to bring our country back. Now, I love Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico loves me. I don't know anything about a comedian. I love Puerto Rico. Nobody's done more for Puerto Rico than me. I took care of them when they had the big hurricanes, and nobody gets along better with Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican people than me. They love me and I love them. Go ahead. I don't know anything about the comedian. I don't know who he is. I've never seen him. I heard he made a statement, but it was just a statement that he made. He's a comedian. What can I tell you? I know nothing about him. I don't know why he's there. You put comedians up, and I guess he went on earlier in the show. I don't know who he is. How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden. But I just wanted to let you know that 250 million people, that's what I think the real number is for making America great again. 250 million, the real number. They don't think in terms of garbage, okay? They don't use terms like that, and it's a shame. And Joe Biden should be ashamed of himself if he knows what he's even doing.